Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. American cinema is the best.
The best? That is like the most blasphemous thing I've ever heard. What do we have besides superhero shit, remakes, and sequels to movies that no one asked for? Reviews Without Remorse endorses this meta-commentary. I am the lifelong Met fan, named David. He's the lame-ass Yankee fan, named Joe. And this is episode 180. And in this show, we will discuss... The final episode has played, so Joe and I are going to take a closer look at the entirety of Marvel's WandaVision. And then, we return to Zamunda and Queens, as Eddie Murphy dips into the well for another adventure with Akeem and Company, as Joe and I review Coming number 2, America. What up, man?
What's up? Great intro, and I kind of forgot about that line until you reminded me. So yeah, well done, my friend.
Oh man, I had to rewind the movie 3 times just to get that. It was like, what? Oh, that's perfect. Rewind.
Yep. Well,
I'm going to be very curious about what you think about this, to be honest with you, and WandaVision as well. So this is, I feel like this is going to be a very interesting episode.
Yeah, same here. And I was kind of chomping at the bit to sort of jump at this early while it was still fresh. So with that in mind, let's get to it.
We now have first-person intel from inside the Westview anomaly.
What are we looking at here? Is it an alternate reality, time travel?
It's a sitcom.
Starring 2 Avengers?
It's a working theory.
Well, I know the apron is a bit much, dear, but I am doing my best to blend in.
The first trailer, I predicted that by the end of the series, Wanda will have created a world of mutants. This show's biggest failing is in that it did not live up to the extremely wild expectations that a lot of people set for it. That said, you put those expectations aside, and I thought, all told, it was a pretty darn good show.
Yeah, I would say for the most part, it absolutely lived up to expectations, but you make a great point that maybe we put too many expectations on it, and therefore it was almost impossible to live up to all the expectations. We were kind of, this was, after the first few episodes, the first few episodes, I stayed very clear of any fan theories, whatever. I wanted to see how this, I just wanted to see how it played out. Once we kind of got into the real world, and then suddenly I kind of just went crazy and said, okay, now I'm curious to see what everybody says. This series was plagued with potential fan theories. So yes, it was going to be very difficult to live up to all of those very wild expectations. But as you said, just in terms of what it actually was, I thought this was pretty incredible. And I had high hopes for this from the trailers. I thought this looks really interesting, and I kind of felt like it was going to be kind of fan service on multiple levels, because it was sort of fan service in terms of just Marvel and all the new characters we might see, and how certain characters are going to emerge. Plus, it was fan service in terms of just being a kid raised on TV. You know, so all those little homages to every decade of television was a lot of fun. Frankly, once they got into the 90s and beyond, I kind of wasn't really interested in that anymore, because I kind of wasn't really watching sitcoms at that point. So a little bit of that was a little lost on me. But honestly, I really did think the entire thing was pretty incredible and pretty well paced. But yeah, the big elephant in the room is the finale. And yeah, I kind of feel like it's I don't really know what to make of it. There was a lot of things in it that I really did enjoy. First of all, I kind of felt like on one hand, the big kind of superhero battles, just flying around punching, okay. I mean, again, we were expecting a big kind of finale with the Marvel seal of approval, so I kind of felt like that's all reasonable. And I kind of did like how Vision's confrontation sort of ends with a conversation in the library. It was almost like just when you felt like this was going to be just a big old dumb punch fest, it kind of did that. And it was like, okay, now that's a little more what I had in mind. I kind of felt like that pretty reasonable. Although, honestly, the whole thing left you with a shit ton of questions, frankly. I mean, I felt like the Vision confrontation ends with the White Vision, I guess, getting all of the memories from the Vision that we've been with throughout this whole series, who is technically not real. It is just Wanda's vision of Vision. Sorry. So I kind of was, I sort of said to myself, yeah. So I said to myself, once the White Vision got his memories and suddenly, I guess, sort of becomes a more complete Vision, probably a more realistic Vision than what we've had so far, I kind of thought, well, why does he just fly away? Like, why is he uninterested in what's happening here if he is a good representation of the real Vision? That was one. I kind of thought all the Agatha Harkness stuff was pretty good. The finale of that was okay. The other two big glaring things, and I'm curious about your thoughts on these. One is obviously bringing in Pietro, only to have him be just some rando
Ralph.
who lived in town. Yeah, right. He was the Ralph that we've been kind of hearing about all along. But it was sort of odd because you obviously walked away from that saying either the whole point was literally just to sort of troll us or something else I'm not getting. Because, I mean, you just sort of felt punked after that. And it was like, well, why go to the trouble to bring him in if that was what all this was going to be? So that was one weird ending. The other weird part of it was that Wanda kind of faces no consequences. And I kind of felt like, well, that was a little weird. When she's walking out of town and all of the people are watching her leave and kind of just glaring at her,
giving her the stink
Monica
eye,
Rambeau steps up. Yeah, Monica Rambeau steps up and says, they'll never know what you sacrificed for them. What? Wait a minute. Hang on. Let's be real here. She kept these people in captivity, mental torture for however long this went on. So I kind of felt like this was the show trying to tell me that it's not so bad and you know, Wanda's still the good guy, which I'm totally fine with. But I kind of felt like at the very least, how about a little apology as you leave, as you walk out? I mean, obviously it's going to fall on deaf ears. Obviously, it won't amount to much compared to what transpired. But make the effort. You know, I kind of felt like I would have liked to have seen something there. So that was a little awkward. But I think that's kind of that's it as far as my complaints. I kind of felt like the moment where I really was sort of beaming at the end was when they show her sitting there making tea at the lake, and then the camera sort of pans around the room to her floating, reading the book. And it was kind of like, yeah, it was like right out of Doctor Strange. Yeah. You know, where he was kind of, I specifically remember when you and I reviewed that movie, one of the things I said was that he learned that stuff awful quick. And you referenced the scene where he's sleeping, but his astral projection is floating there, whipping through these books, you know, so he literally never took a break. So I kind of had a flash of that, and I was like, ooh, okay. So I like that a lot. Overall, again, for the nitpicks of the finale, the whole thing still left me very elated. I really enjoyed this experience a lot.
And I also enjoyed the experience very, very much right up to the very end. I thought that the Pietro thing, going through some of your points that you brought up, I thought that the Pietro thing had no way of being a satisfying conclusion, because I don't think they could really, they're dancing with the multiverse, but I think they're waiting on Doctor Strange to do a full explanation about a whole multiverse theory. And in this particular multiverse, Ralph Bonner looks like, Quicksilver from the other place, just some dumb coincidence. And Agatha would know that because she is a Nexus who could, I don't know if we haven't talked about the show, but I've talked about it with my son and stuff a lot. In the comics, Agatha Harkness is a Nexus. What that is, and in fact, there was a commercial for a headache remedy called Nexus.
Yes.
Okay. A Nexus in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a very rare being in that no matter where in the multiverse you are, this person is exactly the same. So Agatha Harkness kind of is almost like Schrodinger's Agatha Harkness. She both exists and doesn't exist across all multiverses. So she would know that he kind of looks a lot like her. So whether that was a coincidence or not, who the heck knows? That's a little inside baseball there for the comic nerds. In the end, it came because of the average audience not being as familiar with that as, your comic savvy person would be. It does come across cheap, like just a cheap ploy to try to fake out the audience, a MacGuffin of sorts. I wasn't too disappointed with it because I think like the other side of the coin, because there was a while there where I was thinking maybe he was Mephisto. Because in the comics, originally, the souls of the children of Tommy and Billy that she created were actually embodied with the soul of Mephisto. So I was thinking they were going to go that route. Instead, they're going with a whole other route of her trying to pull them out of the multiverse, which is also another comic. So I was slightly disappointed, but in the end, I was like, but you know what? Who else could it have been? If you start adding a big bad by the last 2 episodes, that would have been bad. Having Agatha come out with that wonderful little Munsters-esque song. It was Agatha all along. For days, that song was stuck in my damn head.
Totally. Yeah.
I thought that was fine. The scene at the end definitely does try to set up for the Doctor Strange movie, which, by the way, she is going to be in the Doctor Strange movie, if you didn't realize that now. I thought the end of Agatha was an interesting choice because I feel like, Agatha's not gone. She's just held in reserve, so she could definitely make a comeback. And let's see, what else? The White Vision. The White Vision just kind of taking off.
I am Vision.
I'm not 100% sure where that's going or why he would take off if he suddenly has the memories, the ship of Theseus theory that now he is both the ship of Theseus and not the ship of Theseus, but who knows? Now, maybe it's him just trying to get to grips with himself. The entire plot of the show being a reflection of grief, I kind of dug. I liked that it went into that direction. I kind of feel like there was, and I understand your desire for her to at least apologize. I don't think it would have come across well at all. I think that the closest to an apology that she can give was she met their eyes, but kind of in a downward way, and she released the town. I mean, she could have kept the illusion up, but she released the town. So I don't think there was just any way of apologizing for that. And I think Monica's understanding that, you did what you had to do. I know it wasn't easy, was as close as we're going to get. I don't think there would have been a good way of doing an apology that would have come across as anything less than hollow. As great an actress as Elizabeth Olsen was, and God damn it, she knocked it out of the park with a lot of the scenes in this show.
Well, I mean, yes, and don't get me wrong. Honestly, it's not as if I'm expecting her to make an apology and people kind of just sort of accept it and say, no harm done. No, I mean, right, it would have, but I want to see the character make an attempt. I'm sort of having a flashback of Skyfall as we talk about this. There was a scene where the baddie puts the Bond girl against the thing and puts a shot glass full of scotch on her head, and sort of Bond is sort of they're forced to do like a little William Tell where they're going to shoot the thing off her head. Bond is doing this at gunpoint. Well, the bad guy kills her, and he makes sort of a glib comment afterwards and makes his escape. And a lot of people commented, I would have liked to have seen some kind of remorse. I mean, like just some display of emotion that this woman who he was with prior was just killed. And I totally get that. I don't know that I was one of those people asking for that or wishing it was there, but I totally get it. And I sort of feel like the same thing here. I don't need an extravagant display, and I certainly don't want it to sort of be neatly tied up where everything is forgiven and forgotten. But honestly, I kind of felt like this character. The film is what this show does very well, I think, is dance around the idea that maybe we're rooting for the wrong person. Maybe she's not the hero. Like at one point there's a comment, maybe you're the villain, and she says, maybe I am. What do I, something to that effect. I think Monica is the one who says to her at one point, I know you're not the bad guy. She goes, maybe I am. I don't even know anymore. So I would have liked to see some sort of resolution to that where she takes just sort of takes some stock in. Yeah. I mean, the whole point is, I totally buy the idea that she, at some point, what we're watching is not a conscious decision on Wanda's part, more a psychological breakdown. This was a full-blown psychological breakdown, and she's basically convinced herself that she's living in this fantasy world. She that she knows somewhere that this is a fantasy and that she's living in and is choosing to stay in it. So I totally get that. But again, I want to see something at the end of this film, at the end of the series, some sort of remorse where she realizes, that she was the architect of all this, and that these people have been really put through something. So, but I will say this, by the way, and you mentioned the commercials. The commercials were spectacular. Yeah, and honestly, talk about the fodder for fan theories. Where I feel like I've seen more YouTube videos discussing the commercials than anything else, where they talk about what this could mean, what this could relate to, and I've seen a lot of that were spectacular. Even down to the shape of the box of soap in the one that is shaped like the Tesseract, and it looks just like it. It would make perfect sense. And then the where she spills the red liquid in the paper towel commercial. On one hand, it looks like blood. I get it. It was a little more soupy than just regular Kool-Aid or whatever it was supposed to be, and which was very well done. But I've also heard it compared to the ether from Thor: The Dark World. So all of these were fantastic. And I have to tell you, at one point, just to tell you how much I was enjoying this. At one point, probably about halfway through, my brother was over one day, and of course we're tearing up the show, going through everything, talking about our theories or whatever. And at one point I said, it's amazing that this show could be so in depth, have so many Easter eggs, have so many little hints and things happening here and there that you can sort of break it all down and you see, oh, this means this and this means that. Then you look at something like Wonder Woman 84, and it's like they couldn't even be bothered to do one rewrite just to make something that made some sense. Honestly, talk about. That goes to show just how great this series was, and just it really is just a tribute to the Marvel movies in general. But honestly, this show really did pull out all the stops. So for all the nitpicks, it really was just a grand slam.
I'll agree with you wholeheartedly on that. In 2 weeks, we get Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We'll do the same thing where we review the pilot, and then we'll review all the shows at the end. But before we end this segment, there's no way I'm letting this segment go without asking you 2 questions. Number 1, how are you feeling about the introduction of Captain Marvel? She's now known as Photon in the comic. Let's start with that. I want to hear your feelings on that, her first appearance.
I thought she was great. The actress was very good. I could easily see her doing, at the very least, being part of an ensemble. I I kind of, to be honest with you, I don't really know the character from the comics well enough to know what her actual origin is, to know if I felt that this was sort of faithful. I kind of felt like I was a little kind of torn. I mean, honestly, she wasn't the only one who got sucked into the barrier. She went through, the big thing was, you've gone through twice and your cells or whatever. And then by the time she goes in the third time, she's a full-blown superhero. I'm kind of feeling like, well, shouldn't everybody have something then? And for all I know, maybe they'll circle back to that. But I thought she was a very good character in the universe. And I did like, by the way, how what she was wearing was kind of like a wink to her costume.
Yep.
Very well done. And if you're saying to me, do you think this is a little possible, like as a possible clue leaning towards Secret Wars? Yeah, pretty. Fingers crossed.
And this leads me to my last question that I have to ask. And this question is not for you, Joe. This one is for the costume commander. The final form of Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. What do you think?
Pretty awesome. Pretty damn awesome. I kind of felt like they probably could have even gotten a little closer, but boy, I'm not going to nitpick. I thought they really did. I was pretty thrilled, actually, that it was almost like once she said the Scarlet Witch in the second to last episode, I kind of was like, I lit up and I was like, oh, wow, this all of a sudden, I feel like I'm kind of getting an origin story all of a sudden, even though we've been with this character for quite a while. This was sort of her origin story. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I like this. I really like where this is headed. And I kind of feel like it's in some respect, it's an acknowledgement that this character has been kind of underutilized up until now, which I think probably most Marvel fans, comic fans would probably agree. I remember us having conversations about, I don't think it was Endgame. I think it was Infinity War we were talking about, where, her powers really haven't been properly highlighted. Right. So I kind of like how this is kind of doing that now, where she's sort of, she's graduating up to a different level. So yes, I thought when she finally had the costume, I thought, and again, it's this is why I'm the costume commander, because I always say the same thing. It kind of goes to show, why not do the costumes? I mean, honestly, they sort of, and I like how there was sort of like almost like a bait and switch, like a little tease, even as early as the trailer when you saw her wearing the Halloween costume. And it was kind of, you sort of felt like that's probably all you'll ever get. Like that's like, hey, look, it's a little nod to her costume. That's probably all you'll ever get. So the fact that they did that and ended the series with her wearing a full blown, it's like, bam. Look how great she looks. Why not? Yeah.
I agree. I was very, very blown away by the costume. I loved it. The off the shoulder look to it, the little M mask and everything like that. Just perfect. One other thing, I just want to mention one last thing before we move on. The one thing that I really loved was something that bothered me since Age of Ultron. She talked about how her and Pietro basically were stuck under the bed staring at a bomb with Stark's name on it that never went off. And I remember even when I first saw the movie, there was a part of me was like, I don't know why, but that bothers me because it doesn't feel like a Stark bomb wouldn't go off. Why wouldn't a Stark bomb not go off? That makes no sense to me. And in the show, they kind of retroactively explained that it was her first hex, that she was always a witch.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I like that little continuity fix that they did.
Yeah, I same here. I like that too. And by the way, again, just to sort of show how masterful this show is, did you catch that when the bomb is sitting there, the little red light that's blinking, it's making the same noise that the toaster made in I think the very first episode?
Yes, I did notice that actually.
Is your husband tired of you burning his toast? Try our new and improved Toastmate 2000. It's the go-to for clever housewives.
Say, this machine has some shine.
You said it. Set the dial and get the taste back into your toast. Top top and bottom heating elements can handle anything, from meatloaf to cherry pie to open-faced cheese sandwiches. The all-new Toastmate 2000 by Stark Industries. Forget the past. This is your future.
Very awesome.
I mean, boy, and again, it was a Stark toaster. I mean, good Lord. I mean, the stuff that I mean, honestly, this was sort of like all of that stuff. It was like dreamscape kind of smart. I mean, it really was pretty spectacular. I'll run for me. I really think this thing was fantastic. I do hope, I do feel like even the things that were sort of like left hanging a little bit loose, because it's a Marvel show, we know they can revisit this down the road. So I sort of feel like even the ending is not so much the ending. So it's hard to even, judging this like just a standalone film. It's different, so I if it's a standalone film and I don't like the conclusion, I can say, I didn't like how it concluded. But with this, I know there's so many things they can revisit later and probably will, that it's hard for me to even sort of judge it harshly.
You must heed my words before I'm gone, my son. Now, you will be king. But the throne must pass to a male heir. Hakim, it appears you have a son. He must be found.
Prepare the royal jet. We are going back to America.
Oh, hell no, Your Majesty.
Come on! The African monarch Akeem learns he has a long-lost son in the United States and must return to America to meet the unexpected heir and build a relationship with his son. Written by Kenya Barris, Barry W. Blaustein, and David Sheffield, based on a story by Barry W. Blaustein, David Sheffield, and Justin Canoe, based on characters created by Eddie Murphy, directed by Craig Brewer, coming number 2, America. And I will always call it that. Well, I'm kind of in a weird place with this movie. I didn't hate it, but it has flaws. There's my review. I didn't hate it, but it has flaws.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we start with kind of where we left off last week? We were sort of making some predictions about this film. And the big bugaboo that we had was the premise that Akeem somehow bore a child in his very short trip to Queens before meeting Lisa.
Okay. So after watching the movie, and now ladies and gentlemen, we're going straight into spoilers. So if you have not seen Coming number 2, America, then wait and come back. So they do this flashback of the very night that we were talking about, the night that they were going to the clubs. I have a seat. And here's the thing. Now I've watched, after this movie, I rewatched that little section again, and it's obvious to me that this is 2 nights. Because the first time they're kind of walking around in those, very typical late 80s sweaters and stuff like that. And they go up to the lady, I have a secret, I worship the devil. Then it switches to them seeing ladies in a booth. And at that point, they've changed their clothes. Simi is now in almost like a suit, kind of like a white checkered collared, just like white with like some blue stripes collared. And Eddie Murphy's kind of got an open neck, kind of a bluish grayish shirt button down with a dark top with a dark jacket. Now this scene, they did some pretty impressive young down, special effects to add in them meeting a younger Leslie Jones, and it leads to them going, off with them. She gets him stoned, and she, Me Too movement, date rapes him. let's call it what it is. She got him stoned and took advantage of him because he doesn't even remember it happening. But that's a whole other kettle of fish that we'll get to in a moment. So watching the original movie, they do that scene, where they go through the litany of girls, and then they're kind of walking home when they run into Clarence. He says, well, you should just come to the thing that I'm going to. They're wearing overcoats, but they are absolutely positively wearing the same exact clothes that they were wearing in the scene where, there's Arsenio Hall and Drag saying, I'm going to tear you up and your friend too. So in this movie, they kind of make it sound like, they go from there and then they go to have sex and then they're walking back and running to Clarence. He didn't seem stoned when he was going back to see Clarence. And to make things more confusing, when they cut to the scene where there's the Reverend, basically leering at the girls and stuff like that, they walk in and their clothes are completely changed again. So the timeline continuity from the first movie and this movie, it doesn't line up. And it is the weakest part of the whole movie, especially watching them back to back. If you hadn't watched the first one, you could be forgiven for not remembering, but that is a bit of a lazy mistake to make. Absolutely, positively a lazy mistake to make for this movie.
Well, I will say in the film's defense, I kind of feel like, and I think we were sort of hinting at this last week, that there was really no way to do that without problems. I mean, I can't think. I mean, like you said, if just in the movie, if they were wearing different clothes when they run into the barbershop guy and then go to the Black Awareness Night, whatever, that would have been their out.
Yeah.
But so with that in mind, it's, I mean, and frankly, that's really more the fault of the original because, as we said last week, it's kind of weird. Like they show that they're spending the night in this nightclub to do a whole montage of all these crazy women that they run into. Then later they're leaving. They see the guy closing the barbershop, and then they go to an event that in real life probably would have been happening closer to like 7:30 p.m. As opposed. I mean, in the original timeline, I mean, this would have been happening. This would have been after midnight. I mean, this would have been 1 o'clock in the morning if you just left the nightclub. So here they are for this one, trying to figure out how they're going to work this. Put it this way: you got the problem of getting Eddie Murphy to have a son, and then you have the problem of how you actually work it into that first timeline. So I kind of feel like if I'm writing this film, it's like, look, we can't make this work without kind of just winking to the audience and saying, look, just run with it.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately what happens. And they do the best they can. So I kind of felt like, when I saw the execution, put it this way, the key problem is how do you do that without making Akeem's character look like a total dirtbag? And I feel like, well, I suppose they did that successfully. I mean, like, as you said, he's literally the victim of date rape. Why that has to happen just so Semi can kind of get himself, a little nookie over in the other room. I don't know. So again, the film, and even last week as we were talking about it, look, that really is almost the only premise I can think of to have a sequel. So I kind of, as clumsy and awkward as it is, and frankly downright impossible, I kind of want to give it a pass because, like I said, it really is just if you can get by this premise, then we can move on to this other story. And so with that in mind, I sort of feel like, again, last week my expectations were real low. And I felt that the film, even though, again, it's not perfect, it's not great, it's not nearly as bad as I was expecting.
Agreed.
In fact, I thought that a lot of, I mean, by the trailer, you just saw a lot of the fan service nods to the first one. And I felt like they kind of got through a lot of that pretty quickly. I was surprised, frankly, how much time they spent in Zamunda. I mean, the look of the film looks like they're spending at least half of the film in New York. From the look of the trailer, rather.
Right.
So yeah, the film exceeded my expectations in some ways and kind of fell short in other places. But honest, it was not for the reasons I would have guessed. I was pretty geared up to be pretty disappointed because they were going to rewrite Akeem's character to be a bit more creepy. They didn't do that. So I felt like, and again, in as weird a way as possible, but okay, at least you didn't sacrifice his character to the altar of, well, I guess we have to give him some flaws now to make this movie, to get the story made. So, yeah, so we'll talk about it. But again, I felt like it exceeded my expectations in some ways, fell short in others.
Come on! I'm back! Say it again! Feel right in this mother... Feel good in this mother... My whole hood in this mother... Come on!
Yeah, it's very simple, straightforward. I mean, I like the kind of way it kind of interconnected. You know, the idea that the son of the woman he was originally betrothed to is the one that's driving the villainy in this. I kind of like that. I thought that was a clever use of it. And honestly, I was kind of tickled because not many people remember this, but Wesley Snipes' first big claim to fame was not the Blade movies or even New Jack City, which was the first time that he was shown off as a villain in a movie. No, his first claim to fame was, oh my God, I can't remember the gosh darn movie's names. Give me a second. Major League, the Major League movies. No, not many people remember him as Willie Mays Hayes.
Right. There you go.
That was like his first real big role, and it was a comedy. And he really hasn't done comedy. He's been mostly doing serious stuff. And I was kind of pleased to see him kind of having fun, you know, and being kind of a comedic foil as opposed to, you know, the typical Wesley Snipes villainy and stuff like that. It was nice. It was kind of like seeing, you know, Willie Mays Hayes being back in, even with his little strut in every time. It made me laugh each time. I admit it. He charmed me a little bit for the bad guy. That was nice. I thought. The idea that he wound up having all daughters, you know, and, you know, frickin' Jaffe being upset, you didn't give me a male heir. It's like, well, yeah, I guess that kind of is an interesting little way of looking at it, a type of thing. A tiny bit of nepotism. The middle daughter was actually played by his actual daughter in real life. The fact that they brought back the same actress who was his original betrothed to hop around and bark. Come on, tell me you didn't laugh when she did that.
I did, and I was, you know, I'll tell you, I have to say, I was pretty impressed with how the women in this movie looked pretty good.
Yeah,
I kind of felt like, you know, she aged pretty well. I was kind of surprised. I mean, not great. I mean, obviously she's well. I mean, I don't know how old she would be, like at least in her 50s, if not more. But Lisa looked great in this. I was pretty surprised. Lisa kind of aged into that mature. I was having Rene Russo flashes.
Ooh.
I said she's kind of doing that kind of Rene Russo, like into her 50s, but still really sexy. But yes, when she hopped in the room barking, I had to laugh.
By the way, that actress was born in 1957. Do the math. That's 64 years old.
Wow.
Yep. Sherry Headley, who plays Lisa, she was born just like 5 years before us. So she's, you know, 57 or so. She looks freaking fantastic.
Yep.
Eddie Murphy, of course, looks old. You know what I thought was kind of funny is the fact that here's old Eddie Murphy, and he probably is, from what I understand, when they were filming this, he was the age. He's currently the age of what James Earl Jones was when they were first filmed the movie.
Yeah.
All right,
yep.
like 50 years, something like that. He looks fine. The makeup effects for all the characters still look, you know, really good. It's not Rick Baker this time. It's just a regular team. So they still looked good. It was nice to see John Amos. Nice to see him have a nice little scene with Akeem at the end. And I like Jermaine Fowler, who plays Lavelle. I've actually seen him on a couple of shows before, so I like him. I like him as an actor, and I thought that he had nice little moments where he was kind of sort of mimicking like a younger, just kind of the look and style of a younger Eddie Murphy. So yeah, I had no problem with him. I honestly, I feel weird almost saying this, but the movie didn't offend me the way I thought it was. I'm still not sold on the whole, rationale as to how Lavelle comes about, but I found myself laughing at points, not nearly as much as I did with the original, of course, but I still found myself laughing at moments. I still found myself charmed. I think that's the word I'm really looking for. I found it to be charming, and I liked that it wasn't like the first one is Eddie Murphy mugging for the camera for as much as humanly possible, and I kind of feel like if the first one was his desperate cry to try to find someone who didn't look at him as a giant piggy bank, I would say this movie is his desperate cry to be, because I think Eddie's got mostly daughters in real life, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So I think this is his desperate cry to try and understand his daughters, so to speak. I don't know. I kind of feel like these movies are just I'm looking at his Wikipedia page now. He has all daughters. He doesn't have sons. He has just daughters.
Okay.
So that would probably explain why he would have done that. But yeah, I kind of feel like because now he's talking about that he would do a third one, but he's going to wait another 20 years before he does it. He wants to be 75 when he does another Coming to America. Coming number 3 America. I have no idea where they would go with this.
Coming 3 America.
Yeah, Coming 3 America. Coming 3 America. That sounds like the porn version. I'm sorry.
And I think that's yeah. Oh
no, I'm sorry. He does have 2 sons.
But that's
go on. I'm sorry. I apologize. He does have 2 sons, but I'm sorry. Please go on.
Just that for him to say he's going to wait 25 more years or whatever, that's ridiculous. Like, I think the only reason he's even saying that is to sort of justify the fact that they waited so long to make this one.
Yeah. I feel like if this is successful enough, he'll do another one. But honestly, I don't really think. I kind of feel like, you know what? This is like. I guess the best way to say this is like the Creed. Okay, this is the sequel that nobody really wanted. I didn't want a sequel to this, and they even made the little meta commentary about it in the movie. I kind of felt like it would take a lot for me to at least even come out of it saying that I enjoyed it, and they managed to succeed. Much in the way that you once described when you saw the trailer for Creed, you were like, "Oh God, why do they need to do this?" And you were pleasantly surprised. Now, granted, this is no Creed. Creed was a phenomenal movie in its own right. Not just set in the Rocky cinematic universe or anything like that. It was just a very well done flick. And this movie is fine. And it was nice. It had the nice little moments, like, the hiring guy being the great nephew of the Duke brothers at the beginning, which I thought was kind of cute and everything like that, but almost felt a little too on the nose. Right. Almost felt a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
So here's my summation of this movie, because there's really not a lot to say. It's fun enough. It's enjoyable enough. It doesn't destroy the first movie, but I also don't think it really adds anything to the first movie. And as itself, it doesn't. As itself, it's fine enough. It just it almost feels like a fanfic version of a sequel, but a very, very well done one, like one that like a person really gave some thoughts to, of all the characters and how they would react. Because the thing is the characters from the first movie the ones that continued forward did not feel dishonest of their characters from the first movie. That alone to me was impressive. I didn't feel we lost anything with Akeem. I didn't feel like Lisa got marginalized, which I was worried about because I'm thinking, well, what is she going to feel about this? I felt like a lot of her reactions were genuine and honest. And I felt like it didn't destroy the first movie, which, right away, puts it above a 5 territory. The fact that it didn't destroy the first movie to me minimally gives this movie a 5. What the final number is, we'll get to. But, my point is, it didn't offend me. It didn't make me feel upset about the first one or anything along those lines, except for the Lavelle, origin story. I don't really have a lot. It's coming to America. It's coming number 2 America. It is, it hits its little beats. It tells its little jokes. It's pleasant enough. It, has growth enough of the characters, no different. It is a sequel to Coming to America. That's as much of a compliment as I can give it.
I'm the king of this shop. That's funny in hell.
Well. Say it again.
It is so good to see you. Well, I be damn. Look who done come up in here.
Hey, it's Kunta Kinte and Ebola.
Famine and Blood Diamond.
Nelson Mandela and Winnie.
Those hungry babies with the flies on their face.
Hey, oh, that's too much. Now, you stepped over the line. Now, we won't be talking that kind of shit about the hungry babies. You're going to have to get out of my chair.
Politically incorrect.
All right, what do you think? Scale of 1 to 10, my friend.
Boy, this is going to be a tricky one. I don't know. I mean, I sort of feel like the film, sort of by its own nature, didn't really have a chance to really reach the heights that, your average comedy with no strings attached could do. This really was a struggle to kind of revisit a film from the 80s and kind of do it in a way that pays homage and revisits all the things that we liked about the first one. The film does, I feel like the film successfully does sort of not stand on its own in terms of, I mean, when you watch it, if you didn't see the first one, you're not going to understand it. Mm-hmm. But I did feel that the film told its own story a lot more than I thought it was going to. Again, I really do feel like the trailer gave me some low expectations, which was probably very good.
Yeah.
Had I gone in here with high hopes, I would have really been crushed. So yeah, I mean, the film is pretty good. It definitely doesn't succeed on a lot of levels. And I haven't even gotten to some of my biggest criticism, which I'll get to shortly when we do our Who Asked You. But overall, I think it was okay. It did keep my interest the whole time. I was pretty invested in the characters. There was a little too much of this, maybe not enough of that. But for the most part, it was coherent and it was enjoyable. I feel like a 7 is a little harsh, but I really can't bring myself to give this an 8. So I guess I'm just going to have to call it a 7. It definitely could be worse. Even a lot of people might even think 7 is awfully generous. So I guess that's about it.
I admit that the nostalgia of it did capture me. I feel like what you're saying is quite honest, actually. I think it's an honest assessment of it. And maybe it is a little too high. And maybe the fact that we watched these back to back kind of colored our opinion of it a little bit. Maybe made us appreciate it a little bit more than we would have if we had actually had some distance between the original and this sequel. But I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think, we were talking earlier about WandaVision, and we were talking about how a lot of the elements in that show are basically set up without fanfare or thought in the beginning and don't pay off until later in the show. And it's something, it's like a discussion I'd love to have sometime about the difference between a weekly versus a binge. And I kind of feel like in the case of WandaVision, had we been able to binge it, I think we would have appreciated it a lot more and not maybe found ourselves going off into these wild tangents of theories and ideas of where things are going to be going because of that. And I'm not saying that as a detriment to WandaVision. I'm just saying that I feel like that we live in a world now where binging is kind of like the thing. TV shows will come out all at once and everything. And I think that our enjoyment of this movie really hinges on the fact that we did just watch the first one previously, and it is still fresh in our mind. And I think there's a very good possibility that, if we come back a couple of years and give ourselves a break and just watch the movie without having watched the first one, we might feel differently. But I'm going with my initial reaction just as much as you are. And I agree. I mean, dude, we need to get ourselves checked or something like that, because I literally had a 7 written out long before I even got on the call with you. So here we are matching up again. I think a 7 is quite fair. The movie exceeded expectations, as you said, with your own review, and I feel the same way. It exceeded my expectations as well, and I had very little expectation. I thought, there comes the destruction of the Akeem character. It's going to, dent the original movie, and they didn't do that. I mean, I still don't think it was earned, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, 7. This movie is a 7 movie. It's fun. It's a nice little distraction, and frankly, in a world where we're still, having to deal with this bullshit pandemic, not saying the pandemic is bullshit, I just mean that the whole freaking thing is bullshit, that we have to deal with it. It was nice to have something new to watch, like WandaVision.
It is a funny point. Like if we were watching blockbuster movies every other week, like we would normally, would we be so? Are we going easy on this film because we're starving for some entertainment?
It's very possible. It is very. It's like I said, man. I feel like come the end of the year, we might look at what happened with in my case with Blade Runner 2049. My initial impressions were, oh my god. And then on a step back and a reflection and a rewatch, it was like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's who asked you? I mean, goodness. Okay. So my who asked you is, I have 2 that I'd like to highlight. And the thing is I don't want to rehash this one part of the who asked you because we went over it. I remain unconvinced of the circumstances of Lavelle's creation. It's very difficult for me to let that go. Okay. Once I've said it before, movies are like magic. If you can distract me so I'm not looking at you pull the ace out of your back pocket and you succeed, I'll always give you credit. You didn't do that. I saw you pull the ace and it just didn't work for me. But honestly, you know what really, this is going to sound stupid. This is the stupidest who asked you ever. But from the moment it was first said in the movie, I couldn't let it go. I was like, that is the dumbest thing ever. And here it is. General Izzy from the country of Nextdorium? Nextdorian. I couldn't let it go. I just couldn't let it go. Every time somebody said Nextdorian, I was like, oh, God, I hate that name. Hate it. It's like you give this big regal Zamunda to the play, and then this little, shithole country over here. Well, I just call it Nextdorian. The hell? It's bad enough that I have to sit here as I'm talking right now. Now I'm thinking about, well, what is the geopolitical thing between Zamunda and Nextdorium? What are their exports? Where did the money come from? How are they making money? How is this other guy making money? Why is it at one point he's looking like, Coney 2012, and in the next moment he's like, like the 7-Up guy from the 70s. And then you give it a dumb name like Nextdorian. Stop it. No, that's just, I change that. Give at least a little bit of gravitas to the neighboring country that they almost went to war to, and not this dismissive little name.
That's a great point. I kind of didn't even catch that, to be honest with you. I probably just kind of got by me. So my who asked you is a little more broad. I had a lot of problems with the ending. I felt as if that it seemed like we were kind of coasting into what would be the climax, and I don't know if there was budget problems or something, but it just felt like there was probably a whole scene that was missing. Because, I mean, unless I'm not understanding this whole thing correctly, there was this whole thing about, Wesley Snipes, the general. And he's got it in for Akeem, because there was a scene, and I don't know if this was even in the movie, maybe it got cut out, where they were holding up the posters of Akeem and they were shooting machine guns at it.
It wasn't in the movie, but it was in the trailer. Yes,
right. I kind of felt like they were really hyping this kind of. It was like this whole thing happened because he was trying to avert war. Right? Wars between the nations. When Snipes comes in, he's got all these warlords who comes in with him, and Akeem is looking like, oh my God, this is a problem. And he had, again, this whole thing with, my son wants to marry your daughter. And it was almost like that was the only way they were going to avert a war, right? Well, so then he goes to America to get his son, brings him back because the son, now that changes the deal. Now I have a son, something. But then the son goes off to America with his wife to get married, or to marry the girl he likes. And by the way, the scene where he meets his bride and it's the same shtick where she says, I like whatever you like. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like, yeah, he could have been a little more subtle than that. But it seemed that the resolution was, Akeem he sort of comes to his senses. He's not going to force his son to be the king. He's going to let his daughter be the king, which he should have done all along. Mm-hmm. So I thought once that happened, it was basically him ready to face the consequences. I thought there was going to be a big confrontation with him and the Wesley Snipes character, but nothing happened. It just stopped, and then I guess the way they kind of answer this is the comment about, thank you for taking the curse off of my sister, that she doesn't have to keep bouncing up and down like a dog. And I was like, wait, really? I guess that's the resolution. So yeah, it just sort of felt like everything, like there was something that was supposed to happen that didn't happen. So yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, they did wrap it up in a cutesy little bow, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to its detriment. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm not going to, I agree that my little Nextorium thing is kind of like, nitpicky, and yours is absolutely positively 100% true and a true representation of what Who Asked You is. But gosh darn it, this movie's not taking itself too seriously. Why the hell should I take my Who Asked You seriously? That's my excuse. It's a lame excuse.
There you go.
It's a lame excuse, I admit, but there it is. What about for your consideration, sir?
I kind of want to give it to the characters from the first one that made the reappearance in this one. I kind of felt like he did a pretty good job with all of it, to the point where I don't know. It's like when you go back 30 years later and you go into the barbershop and you go to see the people who were, again, elderly at the time, and they haven't.
Elderly, or
I mean, I'm like, you have to be like 30 years later. They haven't changed a bit. I mean, when he walked into the barbershop, I'm looking around. I'm thinking, yeah, that looks pretty accurate. And then I went, wait a minute, they still have the Soul Glow posters hanging up.
You saw that too, huh?
And I'm like, what? No new hair products have come out in the last 30 years that you might want to hang a new poster up. So yeah, I'm supposed to be, celebrating the good parts with this. I'm kind of mixed on it, but I kind of felt like I did like how they were able to work a lot of the things from the original into this. I kind of felt like this is one of those films where you watch it for the fan service. So I kind of felt like they were pretty generous with it. So I guess I'm giving it to the makeup effects and to the original characters who showed up again. I kind of feel like in addition to that, I also want to highlight, it's probably, should I be harping on the idea that Lisa still looks really good? But I kind of felt like that. I do want to harp on that a little bit because honestly, like I said, she really kind of had this like Renee Russo vibe about her, where she's older, but still just looks spectacular. Like she really kind of kept it together. I don't know what else she's been doing career wise, but she was very good in this, and it was very nice to see her back in this.
You know what? That's a good one. I will grant you that. I like that. I gave it to Wesley Snipes. He made me laugh, and it made me miss Wesley Snipes, the comedic side. I know it makes nothing else in this movie. Everything else about this movie felt paint by numbers, and it was nice to see a little glimpse of the old Willie Mays Hayes. I liked the Willie Mays Hayes character, and I thought he freaking knocked it out of the park. And yes, I'm saying at some point we're going to be doing the Major League movies, I'm sure. But besides that, and he gets replaced by Omar Epps in the second one or something like that. But whatever. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the man chewed the scenery very, very well, and I got to give him some credit for that. So there it is, Mr. Wesley Snipes.
So what you doing back here, Hotel Rwanda?
I'm back. Say it again. It feel right. Feel good. Bang.
Well, that kills the Coming to America series, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. It's done. It's over, at least for another 25 years. So, yay that. Oh, folks. Oh, folks. You have no idea what's coming next. See, ladies and gentlemen, as you may or may not know, in 2 weeks, Zack Snyder will grace us with the glory that is Justice League. So we figured to keep in line of, this, next week, we're going to review Joker. That's right. We are reviewing Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
Alrighty then.
I know you've been looking forward to discussing that too. We had kind of a brief discussion of it, but yeah.
We did. Spoiler alert, this was I believe it was on both of our top 10s for that year.
Yes, it was.
So but you're right. So we did touch on it, and I'm kind of excited that we're going to expand on it a bit because I haven't seen it since I saw it originally, so I'm looking forward to revisiting it. But yeah, you and I did have a couple conflicting opinions about certain parts of it, so it'll be nice to kind of go back and revisit.
Well then, sir, until then, I gotta go make dinner for my kid. I'm getting yelled at.
Well, this was a go with my friend. Thank you so much for this, and I enjoy the conversation very much.
Yeah. I think we covered this as well as we were gonna do. I think we enjoyed the conversation about WandaVision more, though. Just throwing that out there. All right, sir. Joker, next week.
That's it. So I'll see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
All right, where were we?
Mom just said she got engaged to Tom Tucker?
Well, deep down, I knew I loved your father, but I guess I just caved to my father's pressure. And on my 28th birthday, he introduced me to my future husband.
Is your king to be a king to be forever? A king who'll do whatever Her Highness desires. Is your
Thanks, Holly. Good afternoon, Lois. I'm Tom Tucker, your king-to-be. In other news, President Clinton sent me a congratulatory cigar, but it's a little moist.